Welcome back to another Esports Weekly Roundtable here. We're joined by some very special guests to talk about Counter-Strike Global Offensive this week. Just to Alex's side, we have Robin Johansson, otherwise known as Fifflaren. How are you doing today, man?
Not bad, not bad. Happy to be here.
Awesome, great. And of course, just to the side of him, we have longtime founder of Gotfrag, Esports Luminary, Sir Scoots. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I echo that. Thanks for inviting us. Appreciate it.
No problem at all.
Long time.
Yes, long time. Wow, the age jokes start within like 10 seconds in.
Nice.
Thanks, Alex.
Amazing.
I appreciate it.
Nailed it.
Why are we talking about CSGO? I honestly believe that this is the elephant in the room for esports this year. The scene has undergone one of the most dramatic transformations of any game that I've personally witnessed. So let's start right off the bat with that. Why? Why has CSGO become so freaking popular, especially after it had such a tepid release?
Skins.
Yeah, I think
Is it that simple?
All right, guys,
Is it
we're
that
done.
simple?
Wrap it up.
When you have a game that has been around for so long, 10 plus years, you need to find a way to reinvent yourself. And when you give the people something, you have to buy the game, but you also have to buy something you can customize, and you can do so much more with it. And on top of that, I'm gonna give credits to the devs as well, because they have been really helpful in just really trying to make the game better.
Well, okay, so you've started on the first 2 points that I wanted to bring up, because that's exactly what I've seen as someone who's a little bit of an outsider to this scene. I saw that Valve had incredible dev support. I mean, we've talked about this on a couple of episodes before, but like, kids were basically like, I want to, if I've participated in a DreamHack qualifier once and I finished 32nd place, I want that to be on my profile. And Valve was like, okay, sure, yeah, it's there. So they've done a really good job of responding to the community. But the big part of this game is the skins and the betting and the things that are involved in this scene that aren't just purely the gameplay. And what do you think has actually had a stronger effect on the scene?
Well, I think he makes a very valid point with the skins and the microtransactions and the cosmetics, but I think you do have to pull it back a little bit. The game itself came out in 1999, the first version, so very, very old game. A couple different versions come out over the years, but none as popular as the core game. And then they all kind of went away. 2010, 2011, Source has some tournaments, 1.6 has some tournaments, but really it is going the way of Quake in the esports world, right? So, but meanwhile, all these other new games are growing a brand new fan base. StarCraft 2 comes out, Twitch, Justin TV, the streaming world blows up. Then people that maybe had heard about Counter-Strike are never going to go download 1.6. They're never going to buy Source, but the new version comes out. So I think it grabs some of the old people back. It definitely grabs a whole bunch of new people. And so people got to try this. What is this Counter-Strike? I've heard about it forever, so they get to check it out. Again, when it first came out, those of us that had played it a lot, whether you were Sourced or 1.6, we were like, oh, no, this is not what either of us want, basically. But to Valve's credit, they listened to a lot of feedback. They cranked out a lot of game changes, and within that, they added the skin system and the marketplace and all that. I think that took it from a popular game because it was going to be a popular esport again. There's no doubt about it with streaming and everything. But I think the casual market got way more excited about playing it, let alone then maybe involved in the skins and the bettings and the drops and all that for esports. So I think all of that has blown this thing up.
So it's just a combination of factors. But what can other developers... Because there have been other developers that have been in this position, too. They released a game that was supposed to have esports success or was supposed to live up to some sort of esports legacy, didn't quite do it, and the game kind of languished and went away. What are the most important lessons that devs can actually learn from Valve in terms of listening to their community, in terms of responding? Like, there's got to be... You say it's a lot of things that led to CS's recent rise in success this time around, but there's got to be a couple of lessons there that devs really need to pay attention to.
I think it's first of all, since CS:GO has been out for so long, everyone has heard about CS, even if you've never played it. But if you've been around the scene for a long time, you've heard about CS. So when you hear there's a new version come out, you always want to try it. At least you want to try to see what it's about. Like Scott was saying, Twitch, go in and watch it, and then you have, on top of that, when the game first came out, there was a lot of issues for the 1.6 players, because it resembled a lot like Source. When I first started playing CSGO, I was like, well, this is just like a worse version of CS Source. Why is there a point in playing this?
Sure.
Right? So then you have to keep in mind, you can't just listen to the professional players. I don't even want to know the percentage, but probably 1 or 2% plays this game professionally. Everyone else is casual. If you just listen to the pros, then you're going to be in a situation where you're just adjusting the game for 2% of the population. So you have to actually look at the percentage of all the people that plays, look at all the adjustments that you need to be made in balance or whatever, and look at the percentage of, okay, well, how many people use this? Is that overpowered? And just base off of that. And I don't think that's something that a lot of devs do. I think most devs just listen to the professionals and just base their game off of that. And then you as a casual come in and you're like, well, what is this? I don't like this. You know, I don't want to play this. Because you have a different kind of taste, right? So the pros obviously have one sense in how they want to play the game, and the casuals have another one. So if you just keep on changing everything for the professional scene, then the casuals probably not going to like it. But if you try to mix up a little bit, you do 50-50, you try to make everyone happy. But in reality, you can't make everyone happy, but to the point where it's still playable, and you know that's the attempt to try to please everyone.
Sure, I mean you can't make everyone happy, but I think Valve's done a better job than almost any other company out there at being able to make both sides happy. I really think what they've done. Let's look at traditional sports for a second here. I'm a big baseball fan. The most I might do with baseball to actually engage in the game itself is go out and play catch with people once in a while, right? It's not like I'm a serious baseball player, but I buy merchandise, I watch the games, I support my teams, I support the regional sports scene and stuff like that. It's essentially what Valve has done in-game. They've given people the ability that you don't just have to go and engage with hard competitive matches. You can go in, throw a ball around in the game engine, have some fun, but then there's this entire ecosystem that stood up that you can support esports, you can support the game in indirect ways. And I actually think that that's something that's really exciting. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about those casual features, the betting, the skins, stuff like that,
Sure.
the pros and cons of that. Search specifically with skins. There's been a lot of to-dos lately about sites that encourage betting around skins. It's become a significant problem in the scene. Valve has tried to take steps to stem the tide of those sponsors coming in and directly sponsoring leagues and teams. What do you think about those betting sites?
You want to go?
Sure, I'll take this one. Not that I have an opinion on this at all.
No, I mean, obviously not.
Also, I just want to point something out real quick. I've been super quiet because I have a lot of counterpoints. So just go ahead. Not about skins, about the game.
I would like to go back to the earlier question. I would say that Valve, you're probably giving Valve too much credit because on the esports side of it, we don't think they do enough. As a developer.
Sure.
We look at our prize purses of our majors, we look at a lot of other things, and we do realize that this is a cash cow for them. But to what Robin said, they care more about the mass players of their game, which are not the pro scene. That's why matchmaking times are different in the ladder, all those kind of things. So in some regards, they're very responsive, but they're still that Valve kind of way over here responsive, whereas Blizzard is very much involved in WCS and all their tours for their games. Riot is very, very involved in their esports. So Valve, we look, and the problem with us is we look at what they do with Dota and go, whoa,
where's that?
Same company. Yeah. So in that sense, I just want to take a little bit back of, they do a great job, but we think they could do a far better job on the esports side, not necessarily gun balance. What Robin said, that's obviously a sticky wicket, but again, in crowdfunding and different ways to get players paid. And they slowly keep adding stuff. But to your point about skins, gambling or gaming, as they call it in the real world, even though we're gamers, is a huge business for real sports.
It's true.
Sports would not be anywhere near as popular around the globe without legal or illegal betting.
It's absolutely
Watch any gangster movie. There's bookies involved. Like, it is standard, right? Sports books in Vegas make millions and millions and millions of dollars a day. So on that point, it's absolutely great to help grow your sport or your esport. The difference would be that those things around the world are all regulated by governments and agencies, and they've decided legal ages for gambling. Different countries, different. Our country can't even really do it online very much, unless you're in specific states. What's happened with the skin business is it's the Wild West. So there's no real proper regulation. So 12-year-old kids can bet on games. They can spin the wheel on raffle sites. And again, in the real world, those things are regulated. So I'm not against gaming and gambling on esports. I just think it should follow more traditional vice regulation, if you will, just like we have for drinking and all those different things. Like gambling itself is a very addictive vice, even for adults. So you don't want little Johnny getting in trouble for like racking up $1,000 on mom's credit card on a Steam wallet. When he's not buying games with it, he's betting skins. So it's more of a regulation issue than make it a legal issue in my mind.
So I just wanted to say, so to kind of compound that with what we were talking about before with the game. So the thing about Counter-Strike is, so as you guys know, make fun of me all the time. I am a console player, and like that's the way I choose to play my games. Shut up. That's the way I choose to play my games, and I love it, and so on and so forth. But the whole thing is, when I look at Counter-Strike, and I remember when Go was talked about, and when it came out, actually was not a needle pusher, like, at all. And gameplay, I mean, because it released everywhere, right? Like, you had versions on Xbox, you had versions on PlayStation, and then, of course, the PC version. And like you said before, there were a lot of issues with the game itself, right? And then slowly and surely they, made it better, right? Made the experience better. But I'm of the mindset where it's like, I truly think that what happened was people discovered this skin thing and was like, this is awesome. And then they started to play Counter-Strike and were like, oh, this game is awesome. So then they stayed with it, rather than them saying, oh, this game is awesome. Oh, this other thing's all. You guys get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's the way I feel about it.
I think it goes both ways.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it did,
yeah.
right? Like, maybe it did. But I really remember sitting in the crowd at DreamHack Winter. You were on stage playing. And I remember sitting in that crowd watching it. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Only to then discover that, like, friends of mine were betting on this, and I was like, oh man, that's dangerous. That's weird. I'm confused about this. And I thought the gameplay was great. I thought everything about it was nice. But I guess my question to you guys is, do you see it in that same manner as well? Because I don't know. It's very hard for me to kind of say, like, oh yeah, this game is great and that's why it's so big, when, like, skins clearly were the thing that it's influenced so much of the industry in general, right?
Sure.
From Halo to Call of Duty, right? You now have skins in those games too. And I would argue that CS and skins were the big part of that.
I mean, one thing that you can point out is, I think in terms of viewership, I think that betting and skins helped a lot. Mm-hmm. Because there would be games that would probably not be worth watching, especially if I were to be, the one watching. I wouldn't want to watch, say, a low-tier team play against another low-tier team. But I think betting and skins actually solve that issue, where you bet, and it's kind of like if you bet real money in any sports, where you go and say, oh, I don't care about the game, I just want to see if I won or not. But I think it doesn't really justify the fact that every day, or not every day, but every month, I think we hit a new peak in terms of maximum, not concurrent, but how many people actually play the game.
Yeah.
And that's actually in-game, people playing the game, right?
Yeah, I'm
so
sure.
then that has nothing to do with betting.
Yep.
In reality,
that's what I'm saying. I'm almost certain that, like, there are not, maybe I shouldn't say almost certain, but I feel like this thing was a result of it, and then people are like, holy crap, this game is awesome. And then they kept playing the game, right? And that's kind of like where it's gone to, because the game is awesome. It is a great game, right? Like, there is nothing like it, right? On console, on PC, there's nothing like it.
Maybe the newer generation of players, but I mean, I think to speak to what Scott was saying before, though, obviously this is a game that's been out since the 90s. This has a built-in fan base of millions of people around the world. When the last couple of times we've had major televised esports events, guess what it was? It was Counter-Strike. So, I mean, obviously we still have a major audience here. Let's talk to a little bit about what you said, though, about regulation. Now, regulation means a lot of different things when you're talking about esports.
Sure.
Because in that regard, we still are the Wild West. We don't have regulation for teams, we don't have regulation for players, or any of these sort of betting activities that you're talking about. Mostly in the past, when I've addressed this, people have said, oh, we'll figure it out, or oh, we'll get to that point eventually, but no one's really forward-thinking into this. And now we're at the point where we have so much money that is coming through, and a large part of it is this betting. How do we actually get to a point where we can regulate that? Does that have to come from Valve? Where?
I don't think Valve wants to touch it, because I guess in some regards it even goes outside their system. There's cash betting sites, that are affiliated with proper betting companies around the world that will age gate properly and make you send ID in and all those kind of things. Just like if you want to bet on a football game in the UK or wherever, you can do that, and it is properly regulated. Esports is another division, if you will,
right?
And it's cash, no skins, right? But Valve isn't in the business of regulating other businesses. If you ask them, they're going to do one of these things. Like, our market is closed. We control our market. We strongly suggest that you don't take your skin over there and try to sell it or do anything with it, because we can't protect you. And they're done. They're not going to be the police of this.
Do they have an obligation to maybe be a little bit? They did introduce this system. People are monetizing off of this. There's a lot of money coming through.
I mean, again, I think in their mindset, and I certainly don't work for Valve, I think they take care of it within the Steam marketplace, and that's where they stop caring when it leaves their domain.
Can't disagree with that.
I mean, I'm not. I like. They don't code the trade bots. The trade bots get coded outside the system, so it's near impossible to regulate unless Valve closed the system entirely. Which again, this is a marketplace that handles way more than just Counter-Strike Go skins, right?
Absolutely.
So for Valve, it's a much bigger thing than just the skins within Counter-Strike Go on the marketplace. There's Dota. There's all those other things in there. Now, do I wish that they would go, hey, we should maybe figure out a way to age gate ourselves and maybe a super verified Steam account that gets you into these other sites to trade your skins? But again, I don't think that's Valve's like.
All right, well, let's broaden the question out a bit then, and let's talk about regulation over the entire scene altogether. Esports is something that is uniquely decentralized and a very good example of kind of what digital businesses and digital enterprises look like. It's very difficult to say, well, we can either regulate by a particular region or by a particular game. It's very difficult structure. What sort of regulation do you think is necessary going forward into 2016 for CS:GO? We can talk about it at the team, the league, whatever level we want to. We've got major TV deals next year. There's obviously going to be a lot more money in the scene. What sort of regulation do you think is necessary?
I think that players just need to get a grip in terms of they've been working on Player Union for quite some time. And I think it's gone to the point now where they're just lazy. Is that, you know, they have, okay, I wouldn't say they have a lot of free time on their hands, but they do have time on their hands to actually make something out of this, considering, because all of these professionals are playing or are getting plenty of money, you know, from salary, sponsorship deals, tournaments in general. They could potentially afford just to even hire an agent to actually sort this out for them if they want to. Just gather up all together, pay a small chunk of your salary, and get someone to do this for you. So actually coming into the next year, which is supposed to be the biggest year yet for CSGO, you want to be prepared. Because you don't want to go into next year and not be prepared, and then all of a sudden you're sitting there like, what just happened? Like, I thought I was going to get so much more out of this, but then in reality I got nothing.
Yeah.
So something that's been brought up in the past a lot to potentially solve this is potentially franchising teams. So leagues sign rev share deals with teams to ensure that they will have a spot on the league, you know, from there and there out, and then you can solve player concerns, because it's not quite like the Wild West where you have X team of really passionate Counter-Strike players decides we're going to do really good at an event, and all of a sudden now they're a team that has to be reckoned with. You can make sure that sponsors can line up behind established franchises. Do you think that assists this situation, especially given that we're going to have major exclusive leagues next year, or should we be trying to avoid that sort of rev share deal with leagues right now?
I mean, I guess we look at traditional sports a lot, right? And so if you take the NFL, well, there's only one. There's the NFL. Right. And then within that, there is a team association or a team union. There is a player association. There is the league itself. And then the media swirls around all that, right? So at its base, Counter-Strike needs all those things. The tournament organizers need to get more organized. I mean, they're obviously all competing businesses, but you know, when they pick the same weekends intentionally to step on each other, like they're in some regards they're trying to all put each other out of business. Some more than others, right? Teams, some are buddy-buddy, some hate each other. Again, some sort of formalized team structure that covers everyone. Now, back to your point about Valve, that's where I think Valve should get involved. We license this game. This is our IP. You will play by our rules. Tournament organizer, team organizer, players. Right? Forget the skin stuff. Like that's where they should not be so quiet.
I see
on
what
the
you're saying.
sidelines. Like this is their IP, so they should say like this month is off or this month. Like they control the calendar if they choose to, and they don't choose to right now. And again, I think all those things you see in sports happen for a variety of reasons. Player associations popped up because they had no collective bargaining and they weren't getting good contracts and they were getting screwed, and it took them decades in real sports to say enough is enough. We are the commodity. We are the sport. We're walking until we get what we need. And to Robin's point, these guys are all really, really busy. They're all traveling. They're either practicing or flying somewhere to play in a tournament, which is its own problem right now. Too much content of playing, not enough practice time, not enough off time, no off season, all these things. But they're also short-sighted in the sense that they're worrying about them right now, and they're not worried about the future of their player association, if you will. And that's the conversations I have with them. Is like I know you guys are too busy to worry about it right now, but you really should, because you are the ones that might get screwed next year. Yep. But if you set this framework in place, in 5 years, you have a legacy of what you provided for a player association going forward. So when you retire and the next crop of players come up, you've already solved some of their problems. Because no one did it for you 5 years ago doesn't mean you shouldn't do it now. And same thing with the owners. I have no problem with an owner association.
Yeah.
You know, but again, there's so many tournaments and leagues. The issue you bring up about franchises is it's still a way for these tournament organizers to get exclusivity as much as possible without really being exclusive. If I pay his team so much money to be in my league or offer so much prize purse, that you've made me want to be exclusive to you, even though you haven't made an exclusive. This is the only place where the pros play in CS League.
Think of CGS.
Think
That's
of CGS.
essentially what happened,
You know, they bought out as much as they could. Stuff happened around them, and again, I like tennis and golf and action sports more than I like organized sports like the NBA, NFL, NHL. When it comes to what we are, because Valve would have to be our NFL, and they're not, right? Like the Riot model is the team sports model.
It is the NFL model,
right?
absolutely,
but
sure.
We have different tournament organizers. So does the PGA. Different courses hold those events all year round for the PGA under standards and rules and guidelines that everyone has to play by. But they're all slightly different, right? And that's where I do wish Valve would come in and go, okay, you all don't want to play nice in business, but guess what? When you use my game, these are the rules. This is, whether it's tournament standards for monitors and how big the desk is, all those kind of things should be unified for these players, right?
Yeah.
Is that kind of what's happening next year, though? I mean, we have the Turner deal. We know that that's going to be a major, fairly exclusive league, at least for a subset, a period of time over the course of the year. We have rumors about other leagues that are trying to do the same right now. Does that kind of just happen next year when there are fewer partners to work with?
Yeah, I think they're gonna push it. We're gonna get slimmed down for sure.
Yeah.
Companies are going to have to change their business models to survive next year. When it comes to Counter-Strike Go, I think there's going to be some consolidation. There's going to be other companies that go, you know what, we're not going to worry about online anymore. We're only going to worry about LAN. Other companies might only worry about online and not worry about LANs. But again, I think the fight with the big ones is, well, we'll just keep throwing bigger prize purses. We'll keep doing this and that, and we'll make it exclusive by virtue of making it the only place worthwhile to play. But that's not really like building an NFL, right? Because you're pushing the other leagues out of business because maybe you have more venture capital, you have more access to funds, right? And then the big question that Jason and Steve brought up last week, or the week before, whenever it actually aired, sustainability of that model, right? If you come out, even if Turner comes out with $50 million or whatever, that's a CGS number, but some insane amount of money to lock those teams up for those 2 10-week periods, and they all jump into that basket. What if they go, you know what, that experiment wasn't really worthwhile, we're out, right? What about?
I totally understand.
Who'd they put out of business while they did that? And I don't know what Turner's going to do, but again, that many weeks in Atlanta, there's got to be some sort of commitment there, right?
Yeah. Well, so where is the money in Counter-Strike right now? You brought it up before, Scott, but obviously this is a game that has better viewership than basically anything else that's out there right now, yet majors are capped at $250,000. Dota's staring down a $3 million prize pool next week. They just came off an $18.8 million international. Where's the money at?
Well, I think this is where I would maybe say Valve's getting a little bit of a bad rap because they don't discuss the numbers. But all majors have team stickers now and player autograph stickers. Those add up to the millions of dollars that those teams then split. But no one's saying how much that is.
Sure.
So while our prize purse is woefully low, don't get me wrong, like that would be nice if it was bigger. Like there's guaranteed income to these teams and these players just for being in the program, which again goes under the radar. It's not prize money, and it's guaranteed money, which is actually better. You could get last place, challenger teams, still get your 1/8 of a cut of your team stuff.
And that seems silly to me. It seems like Valve would actually want to, maybe not exact numbers, but at least look at the world and say, look, we've provided a sustainable ecosystem where everyone can make a living, and if you're involved in one of these teams, you're good.
Yeah, it far exceeds the prize purse they'll win at the event, even for the lowest team to the top team. I mean, I wish they would say it, because when I say millions of dollars, I'm not exaggerating.
Sure.
And not necessarily millions per team, 16 teams.
I know what you mean.
But
yeah.
The pool is millions and millions, and every major, like more and more. Because obviously it's a very engaging, cool thing to do.
Exactly.
I do wish it was public.
And I just want to defend Valve as well in terms of, we have 250K tournaments, but this was something he asked about in the beginning, even before the first major got announced, was, do you want to have like a TI in terms of, do you only want this one massive tournament a year, or do you want it spread out?
Yep.
Obviously, we want it spread out.
I think we all said that, spread out.
Because the main issue that Dota had, or still has, it's getting better now, is last year, it was so many tournaments, and it didn't really matter. Didn't really matter how much money you threw in. It would never even come close to the TI money. And then you're in a situation where, yeah, it's overplayed, and viewership drops because there's a tournament every day, and then TI comes up. After that, team splits unless you win, and then you basically just start over. It's not fun to watch. Where do you think they got the major concept from? That's from CS:GO,
Exactly.
right? So we can sit here and talk about how much Dota has, but we had something Dota did not have, and that's adapting. And then I'm sure coming into next year, I am hoping that the 258 maybe will be bumped up. Maybe we have other plans for it, but there's always room for improvement. But it's to the point that would we rather have 3 or 4 smaller tournaments, more action-packed a year? Because look at Cologne, look at Katowice, look at all these majors we've had. They're so good and they're so fun to watch. Do we rather have 4 of those every year with less prize money, or the experience you get from those just one time per year? I mean, for me at least, that's a given.
I think looking at international, it's a great marketing move to say you have however much money it was this year. I mean, a good example is look at Halo, right? They, in their marketing, initiatives had announced, by the way, guys, your purchase of Rec Pack sales boost the prize pool up to $1.5 million, right? And it was like a really big deal. But I am also of that same mindset where it's like I really appreciate Riot for not really plastering the money in front of your face and saying these players are playing for the pride of being the League of Legends world champion, rather than saying these players are playing for a crap ton of money and everything else that happens around it just does not matter. Because a great example is when you look at international, and then you had what was it? I believe a Super Week over in New York. I think it was a Dota event hosted by ESL. EG didn't even care. They didn't even practice for it, right? Because they didn't need to because they're freaking millionaires, right? Good on them, congratulations, but the world still has to continue forward, and that kind of reduces the value of it, right? And it almost makes it seem like a joke at that point.
I wouldn't say joke necessarily, but I do agree with what you're saying though, and to build on what you were saying, Robin, yeah, I would love to have 3 or 4 awesome, amazing, wonderful, huge majors through the year. But in my opinion, there is something a little lacking when you don't crown that one world champion per year. I'm not saying you need $50 million behind it, but obviously at the League of Legends finals that we just had, no one cared about the $2.5 million that was on the line. No one even mentioned prizes once from what I saw. All anyone cared about was holding that cup.
Well, and what I've always liked the idea of is a combination of both. Give us 3 majors that qualify and lead into our championship. Even though the game changes drastically and the rosters can change from the first major to the end of the year, it's not like golfers or tennis players.
MLG did that with Halo
but I like that, build to it. And I think our biggest complaint, even though we like the separation, every 3 months is a good carrot to dangle to take the best of the best. We see all this other crowdfunding. We see how successful the stickers are. And if they just came up with a way, like they do in Dota, to let the fans throw more money at the screen for these majors, they absolutely would. So that's what, it's not it's great because the 250 grand is out of our case drops anyway, right?
Of course, yeah.
But if they just came up with another way that wasn't because obviously stickers don't get added to prize purse, all that. But if they just came up with something, a compendium or whatever, we would fund the shit out of these majors. Did I say the S word? Sorry.
You're good.
Sorry.
Don't worry.
And they're not giving us that opportunity, right? What you're seeing, and bless their hearts, guys like ESL are going, you know what? It's going to be 250 grand, and we've worked a deal with Amazon. So if you buy into some of these sponsored products, we're going to crowdfund that way. They're figuring out a way to do crowdfunding without Valve.
Yes.
But how
it's not gonna
easy
be that
would it be for Valve? I know, yeah, but it'll still add 50.
You still want the cool things.
Yeah, you want Valve. My big joke was if they did a compendium, and at the top of the compendium was they add VIP oil rig mode back in, we'd give them $20 million in a heartbeat as a community. Those kind of things. So that's what I get mad at. It's come on, just do some of the stuff you're doing with Dota for this major, and the money will fly, right? And again, they have different dev teams, different philosophies.
Do it for one major and make that into that world championship.
There you go.
And just on top of that, you have to account for the amount of people they have worked for Dota and the amount of people work for CSGO. So even if you were to do something like a compendium for Dota, you have these breakpoints. It's we'll get this for you, blah, blah. Yeah, maybe for CSGO, maybe they can have that be already done in advance.
Yeah.
So by the time it does hit, they're like, oh, thank God we finished this. Because there's no way the guys working over there would have the time to just come up with stuff that they have there. Oh, we got to code this now and just launch it, right?
I mean, even if they did, like they took the idea of like the capsules, right? They're a random capsule, right? So you buy an Envious capsule, and then you don't get to pick which player within Envious, and it's randomized to you. You buy a legendary capsule, you don't necessarily get which. All those things are kind of randomized. What if they just came up with a series of skins for all guns that related to that major, right? They could even commission some workshop artists, right? And now I can pay whatever, a couple bucks for that case to open and get myself a fancy Cluj-Napoca AK, right? That money alone adds to the prize purse. So you have this separate directive that is, when I buy it, I can enjoy it, it's cosmetic, but also I know that I'm on top of whatever I do with the teams and the players, I'm giving something directly to the prize purse. Other point about prizes, though, like you brought up, in real sports, it's never talked about.
Exactly.
Because it doesn't matter in real sports. So I think if we can get salaries and all the other bonuses and perks, whatever esport, like it's cool that Dota makes all that money, but like they make all that money because they don't make all that money.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And it's incredibly top heavy right now.
If they all start making 10, 15 grand a year as they travel the world and they're making 100, 200 grand a year in salary plus whatever they do if they're more a sponsor-friendly player, then prize purses can go away again. Like it's a big dick waving contest right now, for lack of a better word, right? Because it is how they all get paid, right? And again, I was sitting next to guys from Fnatic in Cluj, and that prize money, like again, they were looking at sticker sales, going, "Oh yeah," because again, like it's guaranteed. Prize purse is a maybe, you have to win. And again, in real sports, and depending on the real sports, some are even less important than others in the sense of a prize purse. So maybe eventually, in 5, 10 years, like this whole contest for a prize purse is insignificant because everyone's making good money outside of it, right?
And I think largely in other esports, we talked about this a bit last week on the show, that's been the case, actually, when we were discussing money in esports. Because, I remember, we did just have that ESL 1 event for Dota 2 in New York. It was $250,000, and people were like, whatever.
Yeah.
And 5 years ago, if you had thrown a $250,000 event for any game out there, would have been the highlight of the year, hands down. We mentioned some very important acronyms before in CGS and CPL. So let's go ahead and talk about that. So for those of you out there who may not know, Counter-Strike has been on TV a couple of times before through major initiatives that kind of had a bubble burst at the end. How can we not repeat the CGS and CPL mistakes going forward into this Turner deal next year?
I think the main deal is that you don't want to take away what Counter-Strike is about. That was one thing that CGS did. They messed with the rules quite a bit, lowered the round time, lowered the rounds, gave you max money in the beginning, removed maps that couldn't really be shown on TV because they were too dark. Like all of this just accounted for on top of that. So when you then watch as a Counter-Strike fan, the first time you watch, you're like, what is this? Something's missing. And you just take away, the fundamentals of Counter-Strike, and that's not something that you want to do. And I think Turner actually specifically said, we're not going to do that.
I've heard that as well. They said that they want to preserve the matches. I heard some rumor about like maybe at halves they would do a quick little break or something like that, but otherwise they were going to preserve what the actual match was. Is that it though? Is that really all people have to do as long as you can preserve the gameplay experience and the kind of the spirit of what Counter-Strike should be? That's about it?
Well, one thing to add as well, esports in general, now you did Heroes of the Dorm, that was on TV, but in general, I mean, it's online. So yeah, you can have it on TV all you want and stuff like that, but people, that comes from different regions of the world, they're not gonna say buy a package just to, get the TV package just so I can watch this, because everything should be handy online, right? So that's also one of the things that CGS I don't think did have.
Yeah,
they just had the right direct TV. They had some deals with like UK with the Sky TV. In Asia they had a deal, but it was very limited to who can actually watch.
That was going to be my follow-up to this. Do we even need to be on TV anymore? Is that important? Is this just like a cool value add now to the scene, or is it necessary? Do we have to be there for the right sponsors?
I don't think have is the word anymore. For a lot of years, it was like we all thought that was the future, right? But that was before Twitch showed up. And free online streaming, period. Obviously, Twitch is the big dog, but Stick'em, Justin TV, Ustream, you could name a bunch of them, right? that was, I mean, if you're broadcasting and you're trying to make it look and feel like a sport, well, where does real sports live? On TV. So, but that dream's gone away. Like the numbers, we don't need it. You know, like I'm of an older generation, obviously, but like who watches TV anymore? Who doesn't record their stuff? I mean, yeah, it's a big box in your living room, but you generally sit down when you want and you've recorded something. Like those days of like, again, sports fans do, right? So I think it's a nice value add. It will bring mainstream sponsors and exposure, but it has, and Turner's using the word authentic a lot, and I hope they're being authentic.
I am too. Yes,
authentic.
yes.
Because CGS, I think in a nutshell, CGS tried to make esports into a game show, and not show it as proper sports. I mean, they bastardized all the games they chose. They jammed it together in a franchise model. It would be like if the Dallas Cowboys had a couple basketball players, a baseball team, a couple boxers, and they all had to fight that night and play that night, and then someone had a winner. Like, it was just so convoluted from the start.
Yep.
And like he said, it was on DirecTV's Channel 101. It wasn't easy to watch. The Turner thing, and again, DirecTV is not necessarily known as a sports broadcaster in their own right anyway.
Right.
Like, they're a platform. So, like, Turner Sports being involved automatically makes me feel like, okay, they know sports, you know, now can't bastardize our game, can't change our rules, you can't, you know. And then my other fear with this battle of teams and exclusivity next year is who plays in it, you know. Now, I'm a hardcore Counter-Strike, sorry, microphone, I'm a hardcore Counter-Strike fan. So if this end up being a bunch of Tier 3 teams and a couple Tier 1 teams, I'm not going to care if it's on TV or not. I'm not going to watch it.
Yeah.
And because it's not going to be high-level Counter-Strike to me, right? I want the top 10 teams in the world there. Or why would you have an NFL and have high school and college teams in it, right? It's the NFL. So that's going to be the battle that's going to be the challenge of Turner, to get the best teams there, not the teams that take their deals, right? Now, to the outside fan tuning in and flipping the channel, he's not going to know the difference between Team A and the best team in the world necessarily. But we're the regulars in your restaurant, right? You want me to come eat in your restaurant, right? Yeah. So that's going to be a lot of challenges for these exclusive leagues, like who gets what top talent, what top teams. But again, I've had a few conversations with some people around the Turner world, and again, they seem to want to do it right. They seem to want to mimic how we're all broadcasting it now, but put it on their platforms. And if they can bring their big fancy trucks and do it like we are used to seeing it, I'm all for it. You know, he mentioned Here's the Dorm. I was creative producer for this Blizzard ESPN thing.
I watched. It was a good event. Yeah.
They let the game be the game, but they had to absolutely destroy the interface we're used to looking at because it wasn't TV safe.
And it was frustrating to watch. I couldn't stand it.
Yeah,
I know what you mean.
Minimap went away because, again, to make things TV safe, you have to bring everything in because not everybody has the same screen real estate we have online.
Yep.
So that's why you see when you're watching a sports broadcast, you see the logos way up here in the middle of the screen because the guy in standard def, for him, it's in the corner.
Yep.
So depending on how they address that, they might not care, they might care, but like if you think of the Counter-Strike interface, everything goes to the edges right now. Literally couldn't put it on TV right now in a normal fashion. So how do they adjust that interface? Or do they not care? Do they go, we're going to make it look like online for TV and we don't care. You better have an HD TV. Because if you have an HD TV, you're fine, right? So lots of questions. Again, if they hire the best talent to be their broadcasters, our voices, if you will, and if they bring the best teams, and again, give it a general proper shot, like don't ignore what we've all done for the last 10 years, but look at that and enhance it.
So as long as they're leveraging the creative producers, the players, the people who've been involved in the scene, but they bring the expertise of a real sports production outfit, you think that this could be successful?
Yeah, I think it'll be cool as heck. I think they'll get destroyed by their regular fan base, just like everyone else does when they flip it through there. They go, "What is I'm watching?"
What
they all
video
jump
games
on
here?
Yeah,
so I'm
so
just
be it.
gonna,
I mean, we're the future. So
I'm just going to say for them, they're under a very they're under a magnifying glass, right? Like for Turner, I think it's very, very easy to make video games cringy on TV. And it's been done pretty much every time now at this point.
Yep.
So, and don't get me wrong, I think like, you know, if the right minds are behind it, sure. There's always that one executive.
Oh, yeah.
There's always that one guy who says, but that doesn't make sense. And then when an executive gets involved in a creative discussion, nothing goes well from here. And I think
I know.
So basically, to that point, I feel like for a lot of fans, they're still going to look at their ESLs, PGLs, DreamHacks, and that's the gold standard. This thing is cool. will support it.
Yeah.
But the second that there's one thing that just turns them off, TV's off, and they're right back to where they consume their content.
No, but do you even think that they will actually watch it? The fans, I don't think they even will watch on the TV. They're still gonna
honestly,
watch it.
true.
They'll watch it
Like,
digital, even if it's being broadcast by Turner.
I think it'll be broadcasted digitally. I think that'd be a foolish decision for them to just put it solely on TV because, honestly, like, I've been a cord cutter for,
I won't be watching it if it's on TV.
Like, I'm not watching it on TV.
And as
like,
far as
that's
I know,
just the
it will
honest
be
God
online
truth.
as well.
Yeah,
on
yeah,
a variety
yeah.
of platforms.
I would assume so in this day and age.
But that's the thing, right? At that point, it's like, well, then, why don't you just speak to where the locations of where these people watching it are?
Yeah.
Right? Not to say like it needs to be like that. Maybe this is going to be a pretty interesting experiment, but I'm curious as to how they're going to approach that. It's a challenge, and again, like they're under a very very scrutinized magnifying glass.
Yeah,
and
and everybody's watching, like in their space, like Fox Sports is going to wait and see, and ESPN, like they're all sniffing around, going.
But shout out to them for taking a gamble.
Because let's think about it. Like these companies are companies that traditionally have to pay millions and billions of dollars for broadcast rights to terrestrial sports.
That's absolutely right.
They then take those rights and they sell them to the Coca-Colas, and like that's how they make their money, right? They're basically starting to the ground floor with their all this spend, but they're not having to buy flat out broadcast rights, right? They own the league, right? And again, I think on Turner's side, they're doing it smart by it's a 10-week commitment. So we're going to know really quick after this first 10 weeks. It's not like they're making a team sign up for a year and be exclusive.
Yeah.
Like 10 weeks, if it doesn't work, the next 10 weeks is either going to be drastically different or it ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that helps. So if teams had to sign in for a year to move to Atlanta to do this big beast of a show, and then halfway through they're like, oh, we're in trouble. Against CGS, like they just pulled the plug on it, right? So I think, again, of all the sports companies to dive in, they are kind of the edgiest. They are like you look at some of their sports shows, they also own Adult Swim, right? So
I agree with you.
Like,
I do.
I think if anyone's going to let esports be more like what we're used to and less buttoned up.
Yeah. Only if Craig Sager gets to be on the floor with his bright, beautiful suits.
There
That's
you go.
all I care about at the end of the day.
So we'll
really.
see. As I've said to everybody, I'm positively optimistic right now. But again, like I can turn really quick depending on what I see.
So the
definitely.
question I have is, it's going to be pre-recorded though. Correct?
They haven't really said. They haven't given
The
us
initial
enough details.
announcement I thought was going to be a filmed, like a live to tape thing.
So the last thing I've heard was a couple nights would be live, and they would play a couple days earlier in the week as well. So maybe that would be packages that led to the live thing.
That makes sense.
But I
Premier
really
matches
haven't
being
heard
live, something
all
like that.
But with a live audience.
A live small audience is what I've heard.
Yes.
And maybe bigger towards the end of the season, if you will, bigger venues.
Interesting.
Yeah,
because it's very easy for some kid with a phone to just spoil it.
No, I understand.
Yeah, and I think that's what everyone said to them is like you can't these teams can't play in secret, and then like I'm supposed to wait till Friday to see it because we'll all know.
Yeah.
We'll all know.
No one can keep a secret.
Forget the audience. Like the teams will it'll get leaked, right?
Yeah.
So
I don't care.
Yeah, I don't. I think it has to be. And again, like what sport do you watch is pre-recorded? And that is one issue I do have. You bring up an interesting point because I hear it's going to be a studio audience, right? Well, we're heading into stadiums now, and we're filling stadiums, and real sports are in stadiums. They're not in studio audiences with little fake clappers. So are we going to be disingenuous with our authenticity here? Like, if our sports are now in stadiums, why are we stepping back into a studio, right?
I mean, I guess I can understand from a daily or a weekly content cadence perspective. They're saying, well, we're not going to rent out, where the Falcons play every single week, to be able to carry this broadcast. But I agree with you from a perception perspective. It's really weird. Yeah. Or let's talk about 2016 apart from just kind of the high level about leagues that we have so far. Let's look at the rest of the competitive scene. Do we see this game continuing its meteoric rise in popularity through the next year? Are we going to taper off at some point? And even more importantly, are any other games in a position to be able to threaten Counter-Strike? There's FPS games, it seems, what do we have, 400 hero shooters that are coming out next year?
Yeah.
Most of which is going to be led by Overwatch. Are there any threats to Counter-Strike next year?
I mean, I think we're going to continue to see growth, even without Turner. Like, everyone's loving this game now. We haven't had a Team FPS in PC for a very long time.
That's right.
And again, everyone knows the pedigree of Counter-Strike over the years, and now it's back, right? I was doing a little bit of kind of research before I got here just to remind myself of some numbers. In 2013, we had just a little over $1 million in prize money. In 2014, we had just almost $2 million, like 1.8.
Sure.
2015, we're going to hit $5 million by the end of the year.
Oh, wow.
We're
Yeah.
at 480 or 460
So
right now.
it's
And
nearly double.
there's a couple $200,000 and $100,000 tournaments happening this
Still
weekend.
have
next
yet,
weekend.
yeah.
So we'll hit 5 million. So that's huge growth. I mean, just from 14 to 15 is huge. And the 16 is going to get nutty. And we haven't even heard like what kind of money is behind Turner. Or
That's
some
what
of
I'm
these other
wondering.
things.
Yeah.
I don't think anything competes with Counter-Strike. It is so vastly different as a game. It doesn't matter if it's Call of Duty or Rainbow Six Siege or any of these new shooters like Overwatch, etc. Totally different game type. There is, I've said it for years, like this game Counter-Strike is lightning in a bottle. It doesn't matter which version, whether it's Source version or 1.6. Like the idea of the economy of the rounds with having to spend your money properly, the strategy that brings, plus the different guns, plus the idea of like planting the bomb and defusing the bomb. Like this is so unique as it's wrapped in Counter-Strike. Like
And presented as a better viewer package,
everyone
I think,
has
than
tried
any other
for
FPS
years
that's
to
out
make
there.
something
Yeah.
like it, right? And you just can't. I don't think you can. Now we can complain about the engine and the guns feel with this and that and the other, but like I just don't think you can touch
core
it as its
concept.
kind of game. Yeah, as its core concept. And again, then you add the cosmetics and all the things that are. And again, we didn't talk about it, but Riot makes millions of dollars in skins every day. Let's not kid ourselves, right? So like the idea of skins for guns and the cosmetics, that just keeps increasing people's excitement about it.
Yeah.
And again, so I don't think anything's going to challenge it.
And it's one of the most easiest esports games to actually, understand.
Yeah,
100%.
at the basic part, and then you get into the details of it. But again, very easy to watch.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, this is the game right now. There always seems to be whatever's one of the most popular games. It's one that maybe people aren't necessarily the most hardcore players, but they get it. They enjoy watching, and that's where I'm at with this. Like, I admit I'm a fairly casual Counter-Strike fan, but I watch every weekend's events just because of how easy it is to grasp, how easy it is on the surface to know in a fairly realistic shooter without respawns in between the rounds and stuff like that. You have one shot. You go to plant a bomb. If you don't get it, great. Let's try again. And I've realized every Counter-Strike
it was built for esports without even knowing
Yes.
it, right? In the sense of the cadence of it and the hype of a round, then it restarts, hype of a round, but the match hype grows. It's like it's built for broadcast with the downtime and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can have a misplay without losing a game. For example, if you lose a team fight in Dota or even League, you're done almost.
Yep.
It's very hard to come back from that. Whereas for CS:GO, you lose a round. Okay, let's take next one, right?
And,
Yeah.
and we would question the comeback mechanics now with the pistols being very powerful, or maybe more than they ever were, might be a little too powerful in the sense of like being able to turn a match around. But at the same time, if you're a fan, that's incredibly exciting. Because it used to be, team would win the pistol round, and they were going to lose the next 2 or 3 rounds as they saved their money.
It seems like every time I check the subreddit, there's another Deagle Ace or something like
it's
that.
crazy.
Every single time I tune in.
The force buys
so,
are insane nowadays, which is again makes it very exciting. Not as a player, if you're on the other side of that, like force buy, you're not.
It
very
gets
happy.
very frustrating.
Yeah,
And I
I
think
can
what we're
appreciate
starting
that.
to see too in a broader picture of esports and not just Counter-Strike, because the thing is, I'm 100% a viewer of Counter-Strike. I play very little. It's a fun game, but I enjoy watching it. Like, I loved watching Envy win Cluj and Poca. Like, it was awesome, That's happening more and more. Like, one thing that always rung true to me or just kind of stayed with me was I was watching international coverage, and the host, I forget her name, she was interviewing Casey. She was interviewing people outside, and then she asked him, "Are you a Dota fan? Are you a Dota player? Who do you play?" Blah, blah, blah. He asked this one girl, and she said, "Are you a Dota fan?" She's like, "Oh yeah, I love Dota. It's my life." And she's like, "So who do you play?" She's like, "Oh no, I actually don't play the game. I just..." and she came from Europe to Seattle to watch the international. She's not a player of Dota. She is a viewer, and like that's what I am for Counter-Strike. Like I'm going to IM San Jose specifically so I could just watch. I have no desire to go home and play like other games I do. So I just think it's actually really, really compelling, and that's where we're going. That's where we're going now.
That's a valid point. I mean, we have fans that are not active players or players at all now. Which again, it speaks to how the game is broadcast and presented. Makes it very entertaining. And obviously, as soon as you engage someone as a casual player, then they're kind of hooked, right? But I think you're absolutely right. We're absolutely getting just sports fans, if you will, that have never touched it.
Yeah, and that's across the board.
Yep,
Whether
agreed.
you watch Counter-Strike, Call of Duty, Smash. Again, I am a Smash viewer. Never in a million years will I ever be able to do the things that
Game's
they
hard,
do.
dude.
It is a hard video game to play, and that's just where we're going. And that's how you know that we're at a point where we're not just a video game anymore. We are a spectator sport. But the one thing I did want to say though, because we were always talking about like how esports is a sport, right? And we want to be viewed as such. My question is this. In sports, there are no IP holders, right? Like, that's the unique difference. Do we really need to continue to chase after? So the carrot before that was always dangled in front of us was, we want to be on TV. And now we've kind of conquered that. And now it's like, we don't need to be on TV. TV actually needs us. Do you think that now the next carrot is, we want to be considered a sport, but yet we're so unique, we're so different that, we're kind of paving our own way, similar to extreme sports, to use an example. What do you guys?
I don't know. I mean, we've always called it esports, right? Because we've always thought it's very sports-like. So, I mean, I don't give a crap what anyone wants to call it, really. I mean, it's dudes playing video games for money, ladies playing video games for money. I think it is very sports-like on all sides of it, on the business side of it, of sponsorships and teams and leagues and regulations and rules and broadcasting. The media side of it's very sports-like, and certainly how the players conduct themselves and train and prepare and all those kind of things.
For sure.
Is also sports-like. So in my mind, it is a sport.
Mm-hmm.
But do I care if the outsiders of the world embrace our name or
Right. Do we have to be called athletes?
cyber
whatever. I mean, cyber athlete,
Digital
professional
cyber
athlete,
athletics.
That's all that I am. I like to play games.
Yes. Okay, so we do have a few viewer questions. Some people wrote into us on Twitter. And let's go ahead and start with Botpez. He initially asked us about a player union. We've covered on that, but then he also asked about the strength of non-European teams and scenes right now. Going forward into 2016, do we have a legit chance for an NA Asian or Australian team or something like that to actually rise up against the juggernauts?
define rise up? Like how far do they have to go?
I don't think necessarily that anyone needs to be tournament winning, but when are we going to see our first top 8 team?
Okay, well, top 8?
Yeah.
I mean, Cloud9's been close. Yeah, that's happened. But I think NA, they're very stubborn in terms of they don't want to admit themselves that they are a lot worse than Europeans. So what I mean by that, so for example, let's take Cloud9. They were on this roll, 2 top 2 finishes, maybe even 3. They were all the way up there, and then all of a sudden it's just whoop. Okay, it's gone. Okay, what happened? But we were here. 2 weeks later, we're here. What happened? And like one of the things, I forget who it was. Maybe it was Moses. It was talking about like coaches in general. Like that is kind of one of the teams where they have the talent. They have the players they need to succeed because obviously they did it before. It's just that they need help. And they in general they don't really try to seek for any kind of help. They want to do it themselves. Very
very bullish.
Freedom.
No, I understand.
Very proudful and stuff. And look at Europeans, since we are so far ahead, and they are even taking that step now as well with having coaches. Maybe don't even need it, but they are going that extra mile because they know that's what they need to compete against the top. Whereas for NA, it still feels that they're in this kind of situation where it's like, well, best team in NA. I don't care.
So we know that there's a certain number of teams that are coming to the Turner League and things like that. Will that help giving NA teams more stability? Will it help them to realize these things? Or
no, but it's not that they're not getting paid right now.
I mean, not even
everyone
that,
is getting paid. They all have the same amount of time to practice. There's no excuse anymore. Before, like a year ago,
yeah.
The funniest part for me was where a year ago when NA, they were saying, well, we don't have any teams to play against. How can we improve and play versus the Europeans? And then you have a team like, currently known as Renegades. Vox and Minor before had no one to play with, and the same with the Brazilians. Yeah. Same thing there. Yeah. Currently Luminosity, before it was Keat Stars, they also didn't have that many people to play against. And then you have NA, they have a lot of teams to play against. People that travel abroad, maybe it's only 2 or 3, but the scene itself was a lot stronger. So that was a very bad excuse for the NA teams, the professional scene, saying that but we can't compete because we don't have anyone to practice against. And then both the Australians and the South Americans comes and just prove you wrong. So then obviously they have the salary, they get the money to practice. They do get to go to international events. They have a strong scene. I mean, NACS in general are because of the country or the region is by far the biggest CS population we have. So there's no doubt that you don't have the players. It's just that. So what is missing? Well, you have a lot of players with skill. I mean, look at Skadoodle. He was almost crowned as one of the best offense in the world. You guys have Hiko. You have good players, but obviously still something is missing. What is that?
And I think it goes even it transcends and goes even before Counter-Strike Go. Like we've always, for a lot of reasons, we've been behind the Europeans in Counter-Strike. I mean, 1.6 same as well. And I think one of the biggest issues is North American bravado and ego, and lack of proper use of their time. In Europe, when they scrim, for the most part, they'll play all 30 rounds and they'll actually scrim.
Sure.
To work on strategies, to work on their various things they want to work on that map against whoever they're playing with, right? North Americans scrim to win the scrim.
Yeah.
I understand.
And that is absolutely...
That's not preparation.
It builds a false sense of confidence. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've talked to North American guys, like, they've done a boot camp in Europe, and then they'll be going into the major.
Oh, don't tell me this.
And they'll be like...
I hate this.
Right?
This always grinds my gears.
We won all our scrims, man. We were going to be on fire. We were ready to rock and roll. And I'm like, you don't think that those teams weren't practicing weird shit?
You're an idiot.
Like, they're practicing in your... Like... And they do this in North America. They 10-man a lot. Like they don't spend their limited resources of time when they're not actually playing matches to properly prepare for those matches. And when they do, you do see a difference. When Sean Garris can take time to counter strat and look at demos and really get his team prepared for a series of other teams, it will show. But back home, forget about it. You know.
Yeah. And that's one of the downsides because they travel so much. So he doesn't have.
And this is a big issue in Counter-Strike in general. Like, we're not seeing the best Counter-Strike these days because teams don't have a chance to reset and fix their mistakes. They go, like, literally, the teams came home from Cluj, and Monday night they were playing online matches that matter, right? And then they play them all week, and they get it back on. They're playing Thursday, they go somewhere else. So where does the team have 2 days to, like, break down why they lost in Romania?
Right.
And fix that. They can't, right? And you'll see teams are starting to drop out of events. NIP is not going to San Jose anymore, right? For a variety of reasons. You're going to see, or teams will say, you know, this online league, don't care about you enough anymore. Like there's too much Counter-Strike for the fans to watch right now. Like I don't watch much online Counter-Strike because I know the players are not giving it their all. So to me, it's lesser Counter-Strike. It's a little sloppy, right?
Yeah. This reminds me very much of like 2010 era StarCraft or something like that, where there was just literally games around the clock, 24 hours a day, because everyone thought, we have this esports boom, it's really cool. We'll just make 400,000 leagues for it and expect people to tune in for every one.
Yeah.
And people get burnout.
Yeah, and the North American question, again, it's lots of things. You know, it's also like, again, it goes back to personal egos, right? And this game is not about your frag count. It's about winning as a team, right? And like in North America, no one wants to be the entry fragger. No one wants to be the first guy to die because that kills his stats, right? But if he was a really good entry fragger and got the trade and got the flashes down and all those things, he wins the round for the team, but he's that unsung hero, right? No one wants to be that guy. Or very few. I shouldn't say no one, right? I don't want to stereotype everyone in North America. But again,
I know what
things
you mean,
like that, right?
Yeah.
Role-playing, the bit rolls, if you will, like they have to be done in this game. Smokes, flashes, fire, more important than ever in this game, but someone's got to buy those utilities. Someone has to learn how to throw them. And that's not glamorous. It's not exciting. It's not, you know, the fancy guy with the op.
Yep.
And again, like our North American bravado, like seems to like get in the way of some of these things. It's unfortunate.
I just want to say real quick, I think that that is something, so not to, we kind of talked about the sports and esports thing, but it is funny because you talk about the guy who, you know, has to get the flashes, the guy who has to be the entry fragger. You know, in football, you have to have the defensive tackle. You have to have the, you know, left end. You have to have the strong safety. And these guys aren't going to get, you know, plays all the time, right? I think that that is something, truthfully, that is just going to have to evolve with time if North America wants to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Because you just cannot continue. It's at the end of the day, we seem to always forget that they're still young, they're still kids, and they still have a ridiculous ego because they're famous on the internet.
Yep, sure.
So factor all that in, and you get this situation.
As famous as you can be if you play NACS.
Yeah.
Oh, wow!
Hey,
Wow.
I had to.
All right.
Okay.
Wow.
I think we're done here today.
That's a good song.
I had one fun.
Better you than me, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's like I think their
Cream
excuses
for
are
that
going
burn.
away. We used to have a lot of excuses like they don't make any money and they didn't, and
Of
now
course.
they have paychecks, right?
So now it's when will NA be good? When they want to put in the effort to be good.
now it's
basically.
on them more than
And don't get me wrong, they're
Right.
just because they put in the effort to be good doesn't mean they're going to be good. Like, I still believe that teams like, Envy and NIP and, Fnatic are still
Well, they've had
amazingly
years of a
good.
head start, right?
Yeah,
So
like, it's going to take a while.
I mean, are we in a situation like Westerners versus Koreans in StarCraft, and is it that much of a disparity?
Yeah,
no,
I don't think so. Okay.
But I think, and again, to your original point, I think 2016 and basing some stuff in North America is certainly going to give them more exposure and more money. But is it going to make them better Counter-Strike players? Time will tell.
The way that it's been working for NACS is they've been saying this every year. Oh, we started late. Give us a year. Okay, it's been 3 years now.
Yeah.
right.
Like, come on.
It's like a New
You've had
Year's
the time.
resolution.
Yeah, right?
16 years.
I'm going to lose weight.
Counter-Strike in general.
So
like-
Guys, I'm going to lose weight in 2016. I swear to God I will.
But like
That's my
for
New Year's resolution.
like,
I believe
like
in you,
one of our
Alex.
Thanks,
decently
buddy.
top teams, if you will, Team Liquid. They're definitely one of the best teams in North America. Two of the kids go to school full time.
Yep.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to
debate.
ask you about
that's
that.
a debate they're having internally. I had an interview with Hiko in
I saw
Romania
that.
about it, and like they just know they're limited by these guys, and it's not the kid's fault. Like you
Of
can't
course.
say dump out of school. Like he's in an opportunity to do both, and for years everyone did both. You either had a job or you went to school or whatever, but the money is now making it full time.
Right.
So, like, those kids have to be replaced with full timers, or they need to become full timers. Like, we need more and more of that. I think we've got the team support, we've got the financial support for these players. And now it's a lot of mental commitment to, again, not doing it the North American way, but truly doing it the European way in a lot of ways.
Sure.
So you bring up a good point about the two kids on Hiko's team on Liquid. Are we going to get to a point where Counter-Strike is then looked at a college environment and then taken
We have that in
serious?
Sweden, bro.
Yeah, I mean,
We
you
have
guys
that in
are ahead
Sweden,
with a
bro.
lot of things. Your internet's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah.
You're still Sweden. Moving forward, though.
Where do you live now? Yeah.
Yeah. You're in the land of freedom,
Yeah,
bro.
what you
Don't take any of this.
There is no freedom here. I've
There's
come to
no
learn.
freedom.
There is no freedom.
You get out of here.
Yeah, I went to IKEA.
But
And there was no freedom there. Believe me, it's a war zone. It's a war zone.
Like that was the worst experience ever.
Okay, let's not talk about that.
That's for a Twitter Q&A later on with Robin. But those two guys are super talented, and
Absolutely.
there's a reason why they're on the team. So it's
Yes.
not about get two full timers, because that's not the problem
Yeah,
solver.
they
Because they're
are-
not better than those two
Yep.
young players.
Yep.
And I hate to say this because I am a strong proponent in education, but I'm a strong believer in education. Excuse me. Do you get to that point where you kind of just have to say school's going to take a side step?
Yeah,
I don't like that idea.
I don't like the
Look
idea, and I
look
would
at the
never
league
push
players.
for it. But certainly, just like in regular sports and other careers, kids defer their college. Kids don't go to college. They pursue. Even in Europe, there's players that have deferred and said, "Oh no, I'm going to go back to school." Because again, strike while it's hot. That's the other thing. You don't know how long this lasts, how long this ride will go for these kids. So, again, tough decision for parents and kids to make because those kids are some of the most talented
Yeah,
players.
because
in
they're
North
the
America.
future. They're the future.
Absolutely.
They're going to be.
And you
the
do
ones who-
see some collegiate sports happening, riots.
But,
There's
and
some
that's
League
what
of
I'm saying.
Legends
So
teams on
Counter-Strike
colleges.
is, at the end of the day, it is a first-person shooter, right? AK-47s, M4s. These are guns that are very relevant to our day and age, especially at a time where you're starting to see a lot more gun crime and
Sure,
those kinds
sure.
of things. So can Counter-Strike, because it's easy to make that discussion for Hearthstone, for Smash, for even StarCraft, right? Or League of Legends. It's very easy to do that. But for a first-person shooter, which has always been the thing that I've struggled with, as awesome as Counter-Strike is, it's still a game where a guy shoots another guy in the face and blood pops up.
Sure.
Can that ever be viewed as something where a college can bring that in and foster community?
Frankly, when I heard about the Turner, I'm like, really? They're gonna put a terrorist?
Yeah, no, I was
wondering,
on
yeah.
TV because again, when CGS did it years ago, they changed it to offense and defense.
Yep.
And they never used the word bomb. It was
Yep.
device and package and all these. They tried to be very PC. They actually pulled it out of first person and made it third person. So the fact that Turner's going forward and they say they're not going to mess with our game. Because it is, in some regards, a politically incorrect game, if you will, in that
Yeah,
sense. But
sure.
it's a video game, yeah. And so,
and I mean, I did a bunch of interviews in Sweden for Swedish radio and stuff, and that was one of the questions that I got. And one thing to note, if you learn about the game, I'm sure that everyone that plays, even people that watch, they don't necessarily think of it as violent. The way that I saw that when I was playing, I wasn't necessarily thinking that, you know, I'm killing this person. It's basically more of like, okay, I
But
took
then
him
you
out.
get the crazies.
Yeah, of course, but you're gonna get crazies everywhere. You get crazies if you go to the
as,
movie
yeah,
theater.
as video
That's
games
not
go, though,
true.
like there's no fatalities, there's no hearts being ripped out or spines
Just video
being
games are
ripped
such
out.
an easy target
Sure,
for
sure.
these like really just shallow individuals. Really, just I don't want to use the word dumb, but that probably is the appropriate term.
But I don't. They're not
Yeah.
gonna go away.
No,
It's
of
not
course.
gonna go
It's
away.
always going to happen.
It'd be,
It's always
it could
going
be
to be controversial.
Splatoon, and they
No,
would
you're right.
figure out something about it. You know,
Dynamic
Painting
conversation
kids,
at
you know.
Esports Weekly.
Boom! There you
Yeah.
go. All right, let's get one more viewer question real quick, and I think we have to wrap things up. So, Chulosen actually asked us a few questions about the game itself. In the current state, how do you feel it plays right now? Do you feel that there need to be some additions by Valve? Specifically, he asks, is adding more weapons good or bad for balance? And is the current map pool enough to create diversity, or should we add more?
It's got a katana in there.
I think for weapon balance and stuff, katana.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not playing console here. This is a computer game.
Listen, Halo has an energy sword.
See, I knew that's where you get it from.
Yeah.
Of course.
As for adding more weapons and stuff, it's a very hard thing to do in CSGO. I mean, look at 1.6, there was only a handful of weapons that was really used. Now when CSGO came out, Valve made a very good effort in trying to make sure that all weapons were used. Some more liked than others.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think it's a very hard thing to actually accomplish. Look at when they added the cold silencer, for example. There was a lot of discussion there in regards to why can't I just decide to use both and just put on the silencer like a 1.6? Why is there only 20 bullets? Yada yada. There's so much thinking when it comes to adding more weapons. I think that they wanted to add more weapons initially, but I think it's when you're at the point now where you feel like it needs more tweaking, there's no point in adding more weapons that's going to need even more tweaking, and then all of a sudden you're in a situation where, there's too much stuff to tweak. For the maps, though, yes, I do think that we should have more maps. I love the idea that we have an active map pool, and the fact that every once in a while we're going to remove 2 and add 2 more in. It brings freshness to the game, and I think it brings it revives the teams itself. Because at the end of the day, when you play a specific map over and over again, you get kind of bored.
If I have to watch Dust for the next 20 years, I'm going to cry.
Well, but
That's
here's
all I'm
the
going
thing,
to say.
though. There was an awesome piece, I forgot what website did it, on why Dust 2 was the perfect map, right? But I did want to say, you mentioned regulating the maps out. Do you ever think that Dust 2 would get knocked out?
I mean, I think we're going to see maps that's very popular get brought out just to make room. So right now, for example, if you look at, I don't know where they base their stats off, probably the majors. But if they count the majors, then basically every map should be gone, and Cobblestone will be the only map that's being played. So you can't really do that too much. But like in terms of like vetoes, when they removed Nuke, they had a reason. Obviously, is not a lot of teams played it. It was always a veto. Same with Train. I think they're removing maps that they know needs to be revamped a little bit because they didn't do a good job with it, and then we saw Train got removed. It's re-added.
Yeah.
So even if they remove a map, it's probably going to come back because at the point of time, maybe because right now how many maps do we have? Like 9. Which 2 got removed.
Yeah, 7
Nuke is
in the
gone.
active.
Yeah. 7 in the active, but I'm saying
yeah.
like in general, like I think we have 9 in total. And I think we're going to come to a point now where the more maps we add, and we're just going to have a floating one. Maybe every 2 majors we switch our 1 or 2 maps to just keep it flowing because that's going to bring a freshness to the game. And I think that's really, really helpful.
I think the guns, we have enough variety of guns.
Yes.
And I think they'll continually be tweaked per Valve, because they look at 2 things. They look how the pros use them in tournaments, and they look how matchmaking uses them.
Sure.
Yeah.
2 wildly different worlds sometimes,
yes.
With how money's managed or not managed in the casual scene, right? In the sense of what people are buying when they should or shouldn't buy stuff. So I think you're just going to continually see tweaks to that system, right? And they definitely are not going down the line where there's a pro mod where a gun performs this way in the pro scene and this way in the casual scene. They already have that with some of their timers. The round timer, the bond timer, etc. As for maps, I agree with Robin on that. I think the variety of the rotation is good. I don't think we would ever get to like a 12 map active pool.
Oh, no.
I mean, because what happens is teams just like, again, going back to playing every day or traveling to go somewhere, teams just will choose, we're not good at that map, we'll always ban that map, and then they never practice it, they never worry about it, right? And occasionally it'll bite them in the butt, but that's always going to happen. Like, I mean, with the exception of StarCraft, like, we're the most variety game out there in the sense of
definitely.
maps, right?
Yeah.
Maybe back in the old Quake days, right? But like, all the MOBAs are played out on one map.
Yeah.
Right, one map. And again, players just basically were like, oh, we never play Nuke, so we'll just ban it. We're terrible at Mirage, so we're not gonna try to get better at Mirage. We don't have the time to get better at Mirage. We'll just ban Mirage. But what Valve is doing by taking out my 2 favorite maps, and I can't even ban them anymore, and giving me 2 more, like, that rotation works really well. Not only does it let everyone beat on the map for a while, because again, Nuke came out for a variety of reasons. It was too CT sided, it wasn't a good rebuild, all those kind of things, and because no one played it, that's why they didn't play it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you see a map like Cache and Mirage get played a lot. Why? Because they're really well balanced and well made maps, right? Dust 2, everyone hates. It's the most played map in Counter-Strike history.
Yes,
but it's really fairly built, right?
It is really good.
Both
yes.
sides can win their side, right? Depending on the strats, and goes both ways, right? Not always, but like I don't like when you go, oh well, it's CT sided map. It should be 11-4 score side. It's like.
Maybe we can challenge that assumption a little bit.
Yeah, I like the idea of rotating it out, but I think the map pool needs to, like, the active one that you choose from in a tournament.
Should say it's 7.
7 or so.
Sure.
Do you guys like the idea of vetoes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
vetoes?
Yeah.
Okay. Because, I mean, like, in Call of Duty, they did vetoes for a little while, and it did well. But it didn't force players to actually learn a lot of maps. So it was a very similar situation where, like, players just were not putting that time forward to learn specific maps. And then they brought back set bracket rounds. So, like, now it's like, you're going to play these 3 maps this round, so you have to prepare for it.
Yeah, and that goes both ways. Like, because in the old days, like the CPL days, like, you knew round 2 was Dust 2, and if you won Dust 2, you were playing on Train, and like it was the whole bracket was mapped out. You knew every map, whether you fell down to lower, like no vetoes, no bans. I like the strategy of this, because again, if I'm really bad at one map, like, I also have to think about what you're really good at.
Yeah.
So, and are you gonna ban that, or are you gonna know I'm gonna ban your map? Are you gonna ban my map? Like,
there's
a
a strategy element to it. I think it's great.
And then
like
you end up with at the end of all these processes, depending on who's running the tournament, there's like a randomizer of 3 different maps. So if you had to use your bans somewhere else, and that map you're not really good at is floating there, well, you might get nailed with it on the 3rd map. So
and that has happened quite
it happens,
often.
right? Because I'm more important than I get rid of your best map than get rid of my worst map, right?
Yeah. And
that kind of philosophy. So, and again, as a guy that runs the analyst desks, or one of the guys, like that's a huge part of our discussion. It's not just who's gonna, like, you can't just say it's Fnatic versus VP who's gonna win. You have to know what maps are they playing, because it absolutely is part of how we break down, like, your odds and your chances of winning.
I do have one more question.
I
just want to say,
by all means,
because I'm a commentator, and you have done a lot of hosting. You have commentated as well. One of the things that
no room for you, Golden Boy. Stay in the console world.
I'm perfectly fine there. Okay, moving forward. But what's sad?
Wants it.
You want to know
Everyone
what's sad,
wants
Kevin? I was going to compliment him.
I know, and you're just done now, right? So
wait, why are you doing this to me now?
I love you, baby. You're good. But like, you're not, man. I don't like you that much. But I did want to say, how do you feel about the level of talent right now in Counter-Strike? Because when I watched DreamHack Cluj, I would say that the analyst desk was absolutely stunning. Like, hearing Thorn break everything down, Richard Lewis and the way he guides questions. Robin, when you were on there and you were able to, like, break it down, even your Spirit Breaker, all that stuff, was still, it was so well. And granted, my only complaint is that there's too much high-level talk. So it's like, I am not a player, right? But I want to be able to, like, understand everything. And there's some things, but it's like phrasing, and everyone has that. Even
sure,
I have that when I cast. How do you feel Counter-Strike is as far as, like, having to learn the game, the ins and outs? Because you mentioned, right, you have to talk about the maps. You have to talk about how good they are. But I look at other, like, games, other esports, and their casters are not thinking that. They're thinking of the hype moment. Oh, he got a double kill, and like that's literally it. Do you feel like Counter-Strike is kind of setting the tone for that, or did League do that beforehand, or
I have always said when I started commentating that is before I started was we had a lot of bad people commentating, and not to a sense where they were bad commentators. I just felt that they taught the game incorrectly. And I think that's the bottom line for commentators, for analysis, is to teach the game the way that it should be played. So like, you have a bunch of YouTube clips like, oh, look at this is how you spray, blah, 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 blah. But in reality, you don't play Counter-Strike. But if you're a new player to Counter-Strike and you tune in, you're like, oh, what is this? Okay, I sit down and I get really intrigued. And then all of a sudden, and then I learn as I watch. I don't have to necessarily to play it. So by the time I do sit down and play it, I know it's like, oh, well, okay, this weapon is this, blah, blah. That's what you should be doing, right?
That's what
Even though it's like high playing, or high level, the more you play, the more you watch, the more you will get a grasp of this. And I think that's the beauty of what we do. As the commentators that we have and the analysis desk we have, especially because you do have the backup. So even if you're new to Counter-Strike, you have Thor in there. You will break it down and say, oh, this team has been around forever. Okay, that's great to know. Okay, what's going on right now? And then you have the analysis. So, yeah, okay, this team is bad on this map, yada, yada, yada. Say, oh, what's this map? And then you'll come to learn the more you watch. And that's why I think having a good desk and good commentators will keep you, sitting there for the whole weekend watching, because I think by far at the end of the weekend you will definitely have learned a lot about the game, the teams, the tournament itself.
I agree with that. I think that as a fairly casual fan, that Counter-Strike has been one of the better scenes in terms of commentators and analysts, of me just getting information and understanding more about the game. I always feel that I leave with a little bit more information about strategy or depth of the teams or something like that. So I guess I don't really have a question, just good job.
Yeah, I think we're incredibly blessed. I mean, the roster, and there are definitely other esports with a huge, group of great casters. You mentioned LCS, like those guys are rock stars as well. And other games have them, StarCraft. I mean, a lot. Like you do a lot of casting, so like not to disparage anyone, but like collectively, like that group that was in Romania plus a few others that weren't in Romania, I think Counter-Strike has some of the most amazing on-air talent in all of esports. And they haven't been trained under the LCS system of proper,
I think that's in the sense more of commendable thing.
Yeah, for a variety of home casting and all these kind of things, and again, they all bring a very unique flavor to the shows they do, and I agree, like that desk was phenomenal. Because it had ex-players, it had North American experts, it has Thorin, who's like this encyclopedia. And then I think Richard nailed the hosting job, between the banter.
He did a great job,
and the professionality that he has to have, because him and Thorin can get really loose sometimes. Right?
Yep.
Like just weeks before in London, very loose show. Yeah. But they both know when they need to button up, and they don't button up too much. Yeah. Right. Like I'm not a big fan of too much button up. I'm just not.
Yeah. They feel genuine. They really do.
Yeah. And I was just lucky enough to be doing some sideline girl reporting stuff, which again, it sounds basic, but no one even does the little crappy interviews I did. Like it's generally at an esport event, how you feeling? So that group you're in, hey, fourth inning, bottom of the, no.
Yeah, no one
details.
Really exactly, right? That is one of my biggest gripes, but I mean that we could probably get into a whole episode of esports.
So yeah, I mean, I think I think the Counter-Strike community's blessed that these guys and again now they're all starting to make some money and getting paid. It's turning into careers for them, which again, as your passion will take you so long, but eventually you got a mortgage to pay. You might have a wife and kid, and it's really nice to see these guys making a living and this guy, again, he's a poster child for a guy that can make a transition from a top-level player to another career, right? And the very first DreamHack he did with us, last winter, he turned to Thorin and I after the first day, and he was like, I had no idea how hard this was.
It's true. Yeah. It's true.
Because the players often hear us and they're like, oh, Thorin, yeah, that's so, I can't, he's just talking crap. What is this, But I think you realize the job of what we do is long and hard. Because even sports doesn't do what esports does. A football game is a half an hour pregame show. Then you go do the game. There's a halftime show. Then there's a postgame. That's it. We do that like 8 times a day.
Yes.
Right? And that's just not Counter-Strike. That's every esport,
Yep.
right? It's more like a golf tournament.
After every single
It's
series.
like covering
Yep.
a golf tournament or a tennis tournament.
I sat there
so
and
it's intense.
commentated Halo for 2 days straight with me and Bravo, just us two, 12-hour shifts. I like to see Joe Buck do that.
Exactly. And keep enthusiasm. Like,
And every
and stay
esports commentator has
Yeah.
been there. Every esports
Yeah.
commentator has been
So
there.
it's nice. And again,
yeah.
I think we talk about players getting their just rewards for all these different games. Finally, everyone's getting paid. Like, same thing with casters. Like, it's turning into a career.
Yeah.
Which is great to see, you know?
Awesome. Well, on that very wonderful, happy, positive note, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up the roundtable. So, Robin, Scott, thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. Guys, we're going to be back with another Esports Weekly roundtable next week. We're going to be taking a look at the 2015 League of Legends year and looking forward to what we can expect from 2016. So hopefully you guys will check that back out. And don't forget, once again, this full roundtable will be made available next week, so keep it tuned to IGN to check that out. And we are going to be headed next week to IEM San Jose, so make sure you get at us on Twitter at hashtag Esports Weekly. Let us know what you'd like to see us cover there. Have a great week. We'll see you later.